2 minutes slow, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. So we're going to start with this optional Pledge of Allegiance. Those who would like are invited to stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so next roll call and conflict of interest check. I'll start here. Michelle Stamalos.
Present.
Gretchen Driscoll.
Here.
Laura Sanders.
Here.
Maris Metz.
Here.
Lonnie Scott.
Here.
Karen Nolte is absent with permission, and Karen Sicking, I'm here. Does anybody have a conflict of interest tonight with any of the agenda items?
Am I going to hear that the entire night? Okay, because
Oh, that's a delay.
that was making nuts.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to be picky, but.
I don't want to hear that either.
Oh.
Make me self-conscious. Okay. So next is approval of the agenda, and I do want to request a change to the agenda, which is I would like to remove the approval of the changes to the zoning ordinance. We're going to bump that to the next month's agenda. There was a formatting error with the version of that was approved by the Planning Commission, so we need to coordinate with the Planning Commission on how we're going to address that.
And also, we have the Lang handout and update from BOSS. Put on the agenda for discussion.
Are those, or do you want those to be discussion items?
Well,
or-
I guess committee reports, I'm not sure.
Just committee reports
Okay.
for BOSS, yeah.
Okay, so we'll add to the list of committee reports, the Farmland and Open Space Board report and the Renewable Energy Committee report.
I'll move
Laura-
it to approve the agenda as amended.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second?
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So hearing none, then the agenda is approved. Laura, do you want to move to the other side of the table?
But, yeah, but I think it's gonna bug Gretchen. I mean, it's, you know,
It's
it's
okay.
like hearing an echo of everything that's happening, like
Yeah.
a few minutes after, a few seconds after it.
Well, go
Is there a way we can just turn the volume off on the monitor?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Turned off the sound completely on here, but let's see.
Well, I think, that-
You want to
It's
talk?
quiet because nobody's talking.
yeah, I think it's quiet because nobody's talking.
Just go over there, I can ignore it. I think we can just move on with the meeting.
Well-
We'll figure it out.
Okay. Well, I'm concerned about what Laura's ability to hear the meeting, but.
Yeah, she's got to move.
So I'm going to make I'm going to, next on the agenda is the first call for public comment on agenda items. Welcome. Member of the public, would you like to speak, Mr. Birch? Yeah, okay. Okay, so then we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved?
Do I have a second?
I don't think my.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, then the consent agenda is unanimously approved. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the action items, and the first one then would be welcome to MC Morris from OHM Advisors. We're on page 20 now in your package, and just to put a little bit of I'm not really going to speak about the OHM proposal right now, but I'm going to just remind everybody that there were a number of items that were approved as part of the budget process, and now for the probably next few months, we'll be bringing items to you that were approved as part of the budget that we're now moving forward with. And and the OHM advisors, this is not a capital expense, but it's an operating expense, and it's to establish engineering guidelines for the township, something that we haven't had before. We're also going to be approving just the routine contract that we have with OHM, and a very small little piece of it is for some imaging of the cemetery. So with that, MC, can I hand this over to you for?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Does that sound okay? Hopefully, we'll see. Thank you for your time tonight. My name is MC Moritz, and I'm an engineer with OHM Advisors. We've worked with the township for many years, but it not maybe in the most visible way because it has been sort of the day-to-day operations, as Karen mentioned. So I don't know if it would be helpful to just very briefly, in 3 minutes, explain kind of what we do day-to-day and then what these engineering standards are. Sure. So day-to-day, maybe the most infrequent activity that we do is helping with capital improvement projects when they do come up. Things like, the parking lot needs repair. We can offer, survey services, estimate, design services as needed. More recently, like with the fire station, we weren't the engineer or architect of record, but we provided third-party review. So we do things like inspection, we do things like engineering reviews of plans. And so those are all kind of the most infrequent things. Those come up every 3 to 5 years whenever these kind of projects come up. More often, maybe once a year, there are the kind of the pass-through services, the pass-through costs that come with developments. Top of mind right now might be something like Hillside Acres or Nature's Preserve, those kinds of things. So OHM is doing the engineering review for those, where it's just the developer who is paying for those services, but it gets passed through the township. And we do that for many municipalities across Southeast Michigan. And then kind of the last category I have on here is the little stuff. And this is the most common things that come up. That's, every time that there's a lot split or an application for a shared driveway or a private road. If someone's doing, home improvements where they're gonna be more than 20% impervious, we do those stormwater reviews as well. So those are the kinds of things that are much more common and usually very, very small. Generally only a parcel or two are involved. And so that's kind of the majority, the lion's share of OHM's support with Dexter Township. Are there any questions on that chunk before I kind of talk about these engineering standards? Okay. It's not terribly fascinating, perhaps, but it is a good service to have. These engineering standards, this is a document that we've helped either update or in municipalities where they didn't have one, we've created from scratch this engineering standards for the township of Dexter Township. And this document really works in harmony with your ordinances. And it sounds like there is a development manual that's kind of coming down the pipeline that's in progress, not finalized. But this is one of those supporting documents that should work alongside and support the ordinances. It's separate from the ordinances because it's so tech heavy. Usually the table of contents in a document like this covers, if a developer's putting in water main, what kind of materials, how deep, what kind of backfill do you use? It's that really nitty-gritty, the kind of stuff that makes people's eyes kind of glaze over. We try to take those out of the ordinance and put them in a separate document because they are kind of a different beast. In municipalities where they have been combined in the past, OHM has been brought on board to pull them out, to separate them so that you don't wind up with an ordinance that's like 6 inches thick. And these standards, they take whatever shape or form they need to, depending on what the municipality wants. We know in Dexter Township that health and safety, environmental protection, those are absolutely paramount here. And you've outlined that in your master plan, and it's clear in the ordinances that you do have that those are priorities. So this is essentially an opportunity to clarify where the ordinances don't have all that technical information. It's to make it really clear when developers come in, if there's any kind of, not just new development, but redevelopment, it makes it really black and white what the rules are in Dexter Township, and it gives us as engineers a leg to stand on when we're doing these reviews to say, hey, don't use that material, or hey, you've got to do stormwater management per, the county rules. It basically formalizes all of that and puts it in one place that they can turn to. I think that's the majority of the kind of the headlines that I had, but if there are any questions about what these are, what goes into them, I'm here to answer as best I can.
Can I just add or kind of underscore what MC said about the development manual and then the zoning ordinance? So I think I've mentioned a couple times, I think in the supervisor's report, that we're working on a development manual and a set of checklists that really will make it'll be something that we can hand to people who are doing lot splits or putting in an accessory building like a garage or a shed or whatever. So the intention is, our purpose is kind of regulatory here. We're trying to ensure health, safety, and environmental stewardship and all of the components of the master plan, but we're also trying to make it as simple and straightforward as possible for the applicants. And so it's both a customer service to the applicants, but also a way to accomplish our policy goals more effectively and more efficiently. And so the development manual, the checklists, the zoning ordinance review, and then the engineering standards should all work together to deliver to people a very clear package about what they need to do when they're building anything in Dexter Township. So what will happen in terms of approvals, the MC and the OHM team will be developing these engineering guidelines. They'll also be looking at the zoning ordinance and making recommendations to us about what to change in the zoning ordinance to refer to these engineering guidelines. And then we'll come back to the board for approval of the engineering guidelines and approval of the changes to the zoning ordinance. The development manual, which I'll be sharing with you guys next month, isn't subject to approval of the Board of Trustees because all that's really doing is summarizing the policies that you guys have already approved. So it's just trying to make it's just a kind of interface between our zoning ordinance and the public, so they know what to do and what's going to happen in what order. So we'll just be sharing that with you as an informational piece. But the development manual will also refer to the engineering standards.
And are these standards legal guidelines then? Are they by law, or they're associated with our ordinance?
They're not, well, I mean, we're going to be guided, I think, mainly by the water commissioner and other existing engineering standards. I mean, MC, you can answer this better than I do.
Sure, yeah. We'll be pulling from like the 10 state standards, which guide water and sanitation, kind of how big can your pipes be, where can they be, slopes, all that kind of, the nitty gritty construction stuff. We're pulling from state standards. For stormwater, it would be pointing to and pulling from Washtenaw County stormwater standards, which is what developers in the area are used to at this point. And the vast majority of townships in Washtenaw County do just refer, if there's going to be a big development, and by big I mean like 4 houses or more, not just a new garage, but if there's going to be a development, they have them go through the county for a stormwater review. And with something like these engineering standards, you can basically solidify that to say like, if you want to build in Dexter Township, these are what the rules are. And it's a document that in other townships, I mean, like Matt Parks was saying this afternoon, it would be best, if these kind of things get updated every 7 years as technology gets updated, as, we get better ways of doing trenchless technology, or as we get better materials for pipe and that kind of thing. But most communities update them probably every decade, hopefully. Right, yeah.
But the law is the ordinance, the zoning ordinance is our law. So when we approve an ordinance, we're approving a law. This is going to be a policy, and what the zoning ordinance is going to say is, you have to meet our engineering standards.
Sure.
But the engineering standards themselves aren't a law. They're a standard that must be met in order to comply with the law, which is that you get a permit, if that makes sense.
And this gives us, as the engineers reviewing the plans, it gives us a leg to stand on to say, per Dexter Township engineering standards, you need to, provide 10 feet of separation between your storm pipe and your building, or something like that. It gives us a specific thing that we can point to that says, Dexter Township wants you to build it like this. Right. And then the ordinance is behind that.
Yeah.
So,
I knew you, I could tell by the look on your face, you're about to answer.
I'm just trying to, so what are we doing right now?
So we are allowing the supervisor to sign this contract with OHM.
No. When development comes in,
Oh,
we don't have this book.
mm-hmm.
What standards are we following right now?
We are, since OHM does this job for so many municipalities, we know kind of what's okay and what's not okay. When it's storm, we're going off of the county rules. When it's water and sanitation, we're going off 10 state standards. So we're pulling from those documents right now, but it's kind of a hodgepodge. So it's tough for a developer to come in and know if there's going to be anything unique or different about Dexter Township because it's not outlined, kind of thing. Yeah, so it's.
and it can also make us vulnerable. So it's basically, we're just formalizing the process that has been in place for a while. And every once in a while we get somebody who says, well, who says I have to do this? You haven't approved this as a policy. So that's what MC means when she says, gives us a leg to stand on.
But the standards themselves aren't things that are unique or that we're going to do, right? It's the Water Resources Commissioner, it's the we're not making up our own to include in here.
Yeah, we certainly wouldn't be starting from scratch. And it would be something that, we put into the proposal to provide the service to have meetings with the township to see what are the nuances of Dexter Township. For example, you have a ton of, these 1920s bungalow, lakeside, teeny tiny parcels where folks are trying to maybe put a deck on or a shed or something like that. And then they bump into stormwater rules that are very specific for right here, where it's like, the soils are fill and your lot is, this big. So that's something where, if Dexter Township wants to put some specific guidelines for a specific zoning district, we can do that. So it won't just be like a cookie cutter, stamp it out, here's Dexter Township. Because every community does have kind of things that are a little different. The city of Ann Arbor is very different from Augusta Township, so they have their own flavor, yeah.
And our lake residential is the most difficult to administer from a planning and zoning perspective because the lots are much smaller than in other places, and the houses are old, kind of predate, many of the houses predate. I think our first zoning ordinance that we've been able to find was 1961. So a lot of these houses predate 1961, and they're just kind of harem scarum, and so we're looking for some guidance on how to manage that more effectively and less, in a way that's more transparent and less, and more predictable, I think, for people that own those properties.
Yeah, and that's something where, most municipalities, like I said, for big stuff, they just go to the county for stormwater rules, but for little stuff, for things that are just one parcel, that's where Dexter Township can say, hey, with our, given your priorities with environmental protection, with health and safety, this is what we want to see the rules be for this district, something like that. So.
On this side of the table?
I have one more. This one is just for fun though, because it seems like it. Can you just talk a little bit more about the cemetery imagery?
Yeah.
And I know Trustee Nolte is not here, but has done a ton of work with the cemetery cleanup project. So just wondering if you can give a little bit more detail about that piece.
Yeah, and actually, I don't know, Karen, you might be.
I think maybe I should speak to this. So the cemeteries are really, I think, really interesting. I think Dexter Township, two of them have been mowed. We have 3 cemeteries, 2 have been mowed. One is being mowed not by Dexter Township, and we're trying to find out who's mowing it, who's maintaining it. And Karen and a team of volunteers have been working in this, she's got a team of volunteers that are going to the cemeteries, and a lot of the gravestones have been kind of pushed off to the side. They're rescuing the gravestones, they're cleaning them, and they're starting to look into, we don't know, when the gravestone has been separated from the grave, we've lost track of some of that data. In fact, we were talking about maybe at the bicentennial, we'll see if we can get some oral history about what's happening in the graveyards. Well, OHM has some technologies that we thought could be beneficial for this really embryonic effort to start managing the cemeteries. What is described in this proposal is surface imaging, but today I was saying, well, could you help us identify where the caskets are? So they actually have some technology that can look under the ground and start helping us maybe map out or find information about those. So this is almost, I think if Karen were here, we kind of went back and forth with MC and Karen about whether we should take this out for now or just leave it in here, because we don't quite know yet what we want, when we're going to be ready to have OHM come in. But we decided, so that we don't have to come back again and ask for a second permission, because all you're doing now is giving me permission to sign this agreement with OHM. And what we said when I met with OHM, I said, let's leave it kind of open about how we're going to use that $2,000 to best further this new cemetery, this effort to actively manage these cemeteries. But they do have some pretty awesome technology that links to GIS data. So, if we knew, where the bodies were buried or where the graves were, we could have images on our website and then click on them and be able to say, this is, John Smith, who was placed here in 1786 or whatever, So that's a little less clear at this point.
Sure. Thank you.
But it's pretty cool. I'm kind of excited. Other questions? So hearing no further questions, then I will call for a vote. This is our only action item. And this is, I'm looking for a motion to authorize the supervisor to sign an agreement with OHM advisors for fiscal 25 services.
I'll move. I'll second. Lonnie is.
So I think I'll just do, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So hearing none, then that the motion to authorize the supervisor to sign an agreement with OHM for fiscal '25 services has been approved. Next up is our discussion items. I'll start with financial status and transactions, and what I mainly wanted to emphasize again is that the books aren't, even though this was a period 12 report, the books are not closed on the fiscal year, and so what that means is we use an accrual-based accounting system, so that means that the activity that occurs in the fiscal year gets billed to the fiscal year. So if an invoice comes in tomorrow for services that we received in March, that invoice will get processed on Tuesday and it'll get assigned to fiscal year 2024. And Maris and Sam are gonna give a little presentation about the status of the tax collection and assessment. But one component that isn't yet closed is the county has not come back to us yet with our settlement report for the tax collection. So if you all looked at the revenue at the top of the budget variance report, you'll see that we're not at 100% of the revenue yet. We will be getting more revenue attributed to those lines for the year-end report. So just didn't want anybody to worry that we were coming in under budget in some categories. This isn't a year-end report. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to close the books in May. That really kind of depends on the county's timeline. But our books, we will be able to close everything that is within our control by May, and then we'll have a year-end report for you. And with that, did anybody have any questions about any of the details in the financial transactions? So just a reminder that next month, not the year-end report, but the period 1 report is going to look different because we restructured the budget a little bit. So this is this is the last time you'll see it one more time, this familiar report presentation, and then after this, the budget categories will be a little bit different. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Maris and Sam. I don't know how many of you have, and MC, thank you so much.
Thanks, MC.
It's always great to see you. We're always so happy to see you. Yeah. You don't have to stick around unless you're interested in hearing about assessment and tax collection.
It's fun.
It is an awfully nice night tonight. So. Yeah.
Anytime if you have questions, both Sam, Karen, Maris, Michelle, everyone's got my contact information. So
Okay.
Thanks, nice to see you.
Good to see you.
So you all may not realize that Sam Edwards, in addition to being our administrator, is also our assistant assessor. So, and I think you guys remember that back in August, Chris Ranius came in and gave us a presentation about, it just kind of Chris Ranius and Matt Ditas came in and gave us kind of an overview about tax collection and assessment services. And I thought, because the year has ended, we've had we've collected our taxes, we've done our boards of review, it would be a good time to just give you a status report on those significant activities of the township. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to you, Sam.
Yeah, so like Karen said, I received my Michigan Certified Assessing Technician certificate. So that makes me able to act as Chris's aide and work a little bit more closely with the Board of Review. So my portion of the presentation, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what the Board of Review is, what the Board of Review looked like this year, and then I'm going to pass the presentation over to Maris, which she'll be doing the second portion, which will be about tax collection. So, there we go. Okay, so to start, I just wanted to give everybody a little bit of a rundown on what the Board of Review is. So it's made up of 3 full-term members and 1 alternate. All of these members are Dexter Township residents, and they all serve a 2-year term. And the Board of Trustees actually appoints these members to the board, and they all receive training at least once every 2 years from the Michigan change, so we send them to get this training. So basically what the Board of Review does is they examine the assessment role and they hear valuation appeals from residents and determine those appeals. They also hear poverty exemption requests. We had a couple of those at the March Board of Review. And the board meets only 3 times a year, so once in March, once in December, and once in July. But the March Board of Review is kind of the big Board of Review, and that is where residents and taxpayers can petition the valuations for their assessed value and their tentative taxable value. They're not able to do that at the July or December Board of Review meeting. So it's important for residents to know that if they're going to petition their values, they can only do it that one time in March. So the Board of Review process is pretty straightforward. So residents will receive a notice at the end of February with their assessed and tentative taxable values. And if a resident receives this document and they, decide, I don't like these numbers, I don't think these numbers are fair, they're able to come before the Board of Review and petition those values in hopes of getting them changed. So this year, the Board of Review heard 24 petitions, and all of those determinations should be mailed out to residents within probably the next couple of weeks. Once they receive those determinations, they can go and protest to the Michigan Tax Tribunal. The only way that a resident can appeal to the Michigan Tax Tribunal is by first petitioning to the Board of Review. So they can't just immediately go to the Michigan Tax Tribunal. They have to see their local municipality Board of Review first. So I apologize if this is a little bit difficult to see. Thought I might be able to zoom in there. But anyway, this is what an assessment notice looks like. So all of you probably received one of these assessment notices in the mail. Again, they're sent out at the end of February. So there's a lot of important information on this document. A lot of residents will probably look at the very top where it says this is not a tax bill. They might put it to the very bottom of their mailing pile, but this document is actually quite important for residents to take a look at. So to start, on the right-hand side, that second box down, it will show residents if they're currently receiving the principal residence exemption, which gives them a exemption from paying the 18 mil school operating tax. And that is a huge financial relief for taxpayers because there are circumstances where by having the principal residence exemption, it can cut a taxpayer's bill in half by almost 40%. So it's a great exemption to have. Sometimes residents don't know about the principal residence exemption. The good thing is if we catch it early, we're able to go in and back pay people, back pay the residents. However, there's a lot of people in Dexter Township who have second homes here and cabins and things of that nature. Unfortunately, those residents are not able to qualify for the principal residence exemption. They can only receive that if the home that they're in is their primary residence. So if they have a cottage and then a secondary home in another location, they wouldn't be able to claim the exemption. Another important bit of information on here is showing the current year's taxable value and the prior year's taxable value, as well as the current year's assessed value and the current year's assessed value as well. So this is important for residents to take a look at because it can show the increase and kind of give them an idea of maybe what their taxes are going to look like this year. Another really important bit of information on here is line 6. If you guys are able to see that, it shows the assessor change reason. So for instance, this individual, the change reason was a market adjustment. It's at 5% right now, which is actually the highest it's ever been in about 28 years. So we're capped at that 5%.
Thankfully, right?
when the Board of Review is taking place, how they can contact the Board of Review, and how to set up an appointment to come before the Board of Review. I think a lot of residents might feel a little bit intimidated about the Board of Review, but there are some, residents that will come in every single year and petition their evaluation, so it's really not as scary as people think it might be. You're really just sitting in front of 3 people and expressing to them reasons why you think your valuation should be reduced. I had my first Board of Review this year, and I thought it was going to be this big intimidating process, and it was actually pretty laid back. So I would definitely encourage residents to take a look at this when they receive it at the end of February, and then if they think that they have a fighting chance to appeal, and get different valuations, they should absolutely come in and do that. Another really important bit of information for residents to know is they have the burden of proof when it comes to, the board making a sound and informed decision on their protest. So basically, a resident has to do their homework. They would need to bring in any comparables, comps, data, sales studies, anything like that that could help the Board of Review to determine, hey, we should probably go ahead and reduce this person's valuations because they brought in all this data. And so that's the best thing that a resident can do is just do their homework, do a little bit of investigating before they come to the Board of Review. So I'm going to kind of segue a little bit more into the general world of assessing, just kind of like some basics. So again, we kind of touched on Proposal A, and basically that put in place this 5% cap. So a property's taxable value can only go up based on the inflation rate of 5%, whichever is less. So again, we're currently at that 5% cap. We're not going to go over that. It's estimated that we're going to see that 5% again next year. So I guess just be aware of that. And this kind of falls under assessed value, whereas that last point talked more about taxable value. But a property's assessed value can never be assessed over 50% of its true cash value. So that's another important piece of that assessment notice for residents to take a look at. They just want to make sure that their assessed value isn't too high over that 50%. And this last point I want to talk about is the uncapping process. So this is something that I never knew about this. I think a lot of first-time home buyers might not realize that this uncapping process happens. So basically what happens is when a property is transferred, such as during a sale from one individual to another, that property value becomes uncapped, and then it's reassessed based on the sale price, which allows property taxes to reflect that market value a little bit better. The unfortunate thing about uncapping is it can lead to higher tax bills for property owners. So if they're, on Zillow and they're taking a look at the tax amounts that the previous owner of the home was paying, they could have been there since 1990 and their tax rate was only going up by, at most 5%. But then when that uncapping process happens, it takes that, taxable value and it raises it to the assessed value. So that can be thousands of dollars more in tax, tax money that a resident is paying for. So to sum everything up, for residents, I think it's really beneficial for them to come before the Board of Review. It's a really good educational opportunity for them to learn a little bit more about the process, because it is, again, it can seem a bit intimidating and it can be a little bit misunderstood. So it is a great resource for the community to take advantage of, and hopefully next year we'll get more people in here trying to petition their values. And then with that, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to pass it on over to Maris, so she can talk to you guys a little bit more about the current tax process.
Awesome, thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
That was a lot of information, that's awesome, it's like a lot of stuff that I don't have to
Try sum it
explain.
up,
Okay, so, I guess Kira wanted me to talk to you guys just a little bit about our tax collection process and how that goes. In Dexter Township, We collect for multiple entities. I actually brought one of our distribution spreadsheets. This is not the last one, but the second to the last one, so everybody can kind of take a look and see the different entities that we are collecting for. So during our winter tax cycle, that's when we're collecting the bulk of our taxes, and actually taxes for Dexter Township. This is the most work that we do. In the summertime, Dexter Township's paying only the state education tax and the Washtenaw County operating tax. So our spreadsheet is not nearly this large. The bulk of the harder work is in the wintertime. Dexter Township only collects money for Dexter Township during the wintertime. The other time it's Washtenaw and state education. I'm just gonna jump a little bit, and that's where that admin fee comes from, down there on the bottom, the $140,000 that we collected this year in admin fees. The state pays us those admin fees because we are doing the tax collection for them during the summer months.
So that's another one of our significant revenues.
It is,
That's
yeah.
about 10% of our overall revenue.
Right, and here's a fun fact too, which I didn't know when I first started Treasury, is that if we were to ever collect, Dexter Township were to ever try to collect for any type of a tax collection during the summer months, then we would forfeit that fee.
Oh.
And we would never get it back.
Oh, let's not do that.
Yeah, so don't ever do that. I'm leaving, but you guys just remember that, okay? Don't ever collect any taxes for Dexter Township during the summer. Yeah, Chris taught me that. So, did everybody get a chance to look at the distribution sheet to see all the entities? Okay. So, and then, let's see, after adjustments made by the assessor throughout the year, the tax amount levied in 2023 totaled $15.5 million, roughly, from 3,900 properties here in Dexter Township. So $747,000 still remains delinquent. Even though it remains delinquent, that's the point of doing a settlement with the county. And like Karen said, that we're currently waiting on the final documents for the settlement. All of the documents that I've put together have, they're with Sue now, who's the deputy treasurer, and she's currently working on those, and we should be able to get that back. And Dexter Township will, during settlement, we reap all of that back from the county. They pay us back that money that is delinquent, so they make us whole. And then the bulk of the delinquent taxes, that all goes to the county for collection. You don't want your taxes going delinquent in the wintertime because it's like a 6% increase almost immediately when they start their tax collection process. So throughout the tax collection cycle, money is collected and distributed to each entity in 2-week intervals. That spreadsheet that I just passed around shows you exactly how we break it down. So we are keeping track every 2 weeks of the reports. We print out all the reports to show us what the amount of money that's going to each entity, and then we compare that to the delinquent roll. They do give us a 10-day grace period because there's a lot of things that can happen. As you can see, it's a huge spreadsheet. Numbers can be off, and it's something that we have to figure out. And it's kind of like a giant reconciliation every 2 weeks to make sure that we're on track and that all of our figures are correct before we distribute the money out. And so, yeah, and then we already kind of talked about the admin fee that we get. And
Want to move to the next slide?
yeah. So basically, the treasurer's main job is to collect taxes and distribute them out, as well as investing money for the township. The bulk of the tax bill that you see, me and my deputy, or the treasurer, we set up what you see there in the box in the middle here. It's hard for me to point, but so the description, millages, and amounts. So I'm trying to think of what I want to talk about here. So obviously Sam talked about the taxable value, the state equalized value. That all comes. A lot of this information comes from our assessor, Chris. He passes this over to me, and I get the standard tax roll. And at that point, then I can set up all the entities. So we get the L4029s, the Dexter Township. We vote on our own L4029 every year for how much we're going to levy. And right here is all of the millages. So we're getting L4029s from all of these entities. And then we're able to then set up the tax roll based on able to set up the tax roll based on where people live within the township. Now, everybody's tax bills are gonna look different compared to where they live. We have 3 different school districts here in Dexter Township, which is a lot. We have Chelsea, Dexter, and Pinckney schools. And then we also have WWRA debt and operating, but that is usually everybody's tax for that. But then other people have special assessments, such as road assessments like Carriage Hills. They just ended their assessment this year for their road improvement, so that's taken off their tax bill now, so I'm sure they're gonna be very happy about that. But then we just added one this year as well, which is Silver Lake, for their weeds, and we all had that come across our board to it at one point. So everything is changing with the tax roll all the time, so we never really, it's never the same every year.
And you told me ours is much more complex than many townships.
It is, and just because, we have the 3 different school districts, we're in a lake community, we have the Portage Bay Sewer Authority, we have Multi-Lake Sewer Authority. We collect for them as well as their delinquencies on the winter tax roll. So we do have a lot of different things going on here in Dexter Township, which is a little bit different. So, which I didn't realize when I first started, that I just figured everybody's tax rolls were like this, and then come to find out, I go to a treasurer's meeting and they're like, oh yeah, we only have 1 school, and I'm like, what? And that's why we have a 2-page spreadsheet that we have to keep track of with all of these things going on. I mean, it's
amazing.
it's intense.
Complicated.
It is, but Matt is very, very good at spreadsheets, thank God, and he's really helped me through that whole process of the distribution because it can be complex.
Right.
There's no doubt about that. So, was there anything else that you wanted me to touch on?
I think you guys did a fantastic job. I feel so proud of you.
No,
Yeah, you just, that was great. I mean, that was exactly what I was hoping for. And again, I just want the board to feel oriented to kind of the core work of the township because we're the governing board for township operations. So.
Did you guys have any questions
Yeah.
about board of review or anything?
Oh, I'm sorry, but I did want to touch on too, that's the thing, is that throughout the year, we get the standard tax roll, but that is not set in stone because there's things that are changing all the time. Like Sam says, with the board of review, if people get those exemptions, then that changes our tax roll. So every single time that something happens with Chris, like a principal residential exemption, somebody applies for one, it's approved, then that changes our tax roll. If they rescind it, if they move. So people are always coming and going out of Dexter Township. So every time that change happens, Chris updates his system, and then I have to balance with Chris. So I do work very closely with the assessor because whatever his tax roll is better be what mine says as well. Because if it isn't, then my numbers are very screwed up. So and that's another thing that we're doing constantly throughout the year is making sure that we're balanced. And then every time we balance, you see that spreadsheet, all of those numbers have to change. So, and it all depends on, what school district is getting the principal residential exemption and who's rescinding, and I'm just trying to think of the other things, because there's things that happen. Yeah, poverty exemptions, veterans, and they did change the law recently that they can do that at any point in time of the year. It used to be just,
No more board of review for that.
yeah,
For veterans exemptions,
they can do it at
It's
any
just the
time.
assessor takes it and he can provide them with that tax exemption. They used to have to come before the board of review in March, but that's been done and we're not doing that anymore by law, so.
So, and I just want to be clear, I think everybody heard this, but the Board of Review is a quasi-judicial, so we are the legislative branch of government, we're making laws, that's our function. The Board of Review and the Zoning Board of Appeals are the quasi-judicial activities that occur at the township level. So if there's an issue with the Board of Review or with the ZBA, the appellant or whatever, the person, I don't know what the right word is, but the person that's coming before those boards doesn't appeal to us if they're unhappy with the decision. They have to appeal up through a judicial branch of government.
And they can't go directly to Chris. It has to go through the board of review, and the board of review acts independently from the assessor.
So that's what the state tribunal is. So that's that separation of those different branches of government that we have to protect separation of duties.
I was just wondering how many, you said there was 24 this year, how does that compare to past years?
So past years, from what I've looked at, there was a bit less. There was
Oh, wow.
that came before the Board of Review. But as far as like, valuation appeals and things like that, it wasn't as high as 24. I think the reason that it is so high is because we've hit that 5% cap, and people are looking at their tax bills and they're just like, why is this happening? What is this? So that, honestly, the bulk of the residents who came before the Board of Review were understandably so frustrated with their valuations, but it's coming from the state. It's not anything that Chris or the Board of Review, they're not setting those. They're just enforcing those.
So, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, it could be 2% another time, because it's cost of living, so.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
I mean, it has been in the past.
2022 was like 3.5, and it's been low. Like 2%.
Yeah.
Because
3.5.
inflation has been so low.
Exactly. So yeah, it's that. Yeah.
Okay,
And
thank
it can be
you.
expressed in that inflation rate multiplier, which is that 1.05 that you see on there, which means 5%. That 1.05.
It might be interesting to have a graph to see how
We
it's
do,
doing.
and that's what I was gonna say, we have a pie chart that Karen Nolte, Matt put together and gave to Karen Nolte. It's been in a couple of our newsletters, but it shows exactly, the amount of taxes that Dexter Township receives and how much control we have over, the size of people's tax bills. It's very small because, the majority of taxes are going towards state education, schools. If you, oh, it's already off, but
Yeah,
it's.
you can see that
small.
Dexter's, well, the last one, it showed what a tiny percentage of that overall tax.
We don't have much control over that,
Yeah, so here's Dexter Township's share, Dexter
There you
operating
go.
0.77 mils
Well,
compared to, Washington Community College is 3.35,
yeah,
so.
4,300 total tax, and township is $137
Right.
and $400
So,
for
yeah.
fire. Yeah.
So we're a face that the residents really see, but our level of, what they're paying for the services from the township is much less than what they're paying for Washtenaw Community College or the county or, even the fire or whatever, yeah.
And Gretchen, if you'd like, I can always put together a graph like a 5-year trend, showing the.
I think
numbers
that-
if you'd like.
I think it would help, especially,
absolutely.
not for us necessarily, but maybe in the loop, or just, I think the perspective of, seeing it, it changes, just
Yeah,
like,
it does, year by year, just depending on what percentage we're at.
Right.
So yes, I can definitely put something together that shows, the changes in the number of petitions we get year by year.
But what I think would be useful, so
I was thinking the cost of living.
yeah, to show the cost of living increase
Yeah.
and the tax increase, because every year that the cost of living increase, the CPI has been below 5%, inflation and your tax increase have been equal.
Yeah.
But this year, even though everybody feels this, you look at it and it's shocking because it's much higher than it has been in the past, but really with inflation was whatever it was higher than 5%. And so really the real value of taxes, the present value of taxes has gone down this year, but it doesn't feel that way
It
to
doesn't seem
people.
like it when
Yeah.
they're looking at the numbers.
And that's the benefit of Prop A, that's why how we
Yeah.
benefit from Prop A, so, yeah.
So there is, so here I would assume there's a property tax card, right? How the value
Yes.
is assessed?
Yeah, and that's provided to residents when they come in, to come before the board, so they take a look at their record card. The Board of Review will say, hey, does everything on this record card look accurate? If there's something that doesn't look accurate, they'll let the Board of Review know, and then sometimes the Board of Review will need to, inform the assessor, like, hey, the measurements are off for this property, or, hey, this person, built this shed, 2 years ago, it wasn't last year, these numbers aren't reflecting properly. So yeah, having that record card is very important for residents to take a look at, so they can let the board know if those, if everything on there is correct and reflects everything on their property.
And I would say for past experience, I came before the Board of Review, this was years ago, probably 12. And there were some discrepancies and things that were
Yeah.
wrong, and we
Yeah.
didn't know that we could come into the township and say, hey, where's my card? We were just getting the
Yeah.
normal,
Yeah.
tax
Yeah.
what you owe, but then we found out that there were a lot of things that, more than 3, and it was very beneficial. We came before the Board of Review, and we were compensated back with a credit for 3 years.
Yes, they'll do that, so.
But I just want to make that, if people watch
Yeah.
our meetings, that
Yeah,
is
that's-
something that's actually really important.
Yeah,
to
and
pull that card.
everybody who comes before the board, like I said, we have, every board member will receive a property record card, and the resident will, and one of the very first things the chair will ask is, does everything on that record card look
That's good.
correct? So, yeah.
Any other questions or comments before we move on?
Great job.
Yeah, great job, guys. Really enjoyed it.
Good job, Sam.
So that was the last discussion item. So now we're just moving on to staff reports. And I know Laura and Gretchen, I don't know if you wanted to speak to your board or committee reports.
Laura, you want to go first?
Yeah, I didn't really get to see this because it wasn't in the packet, so, but I do know that, you can read the report for FOSS, but I do know that there's some exciting news, which is that we've got federal and state funding for one of the properties.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And that just came in, so I might be able to.
Well, Barry is hard at work writing grant applications because I signed 3 of them today.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, and I know it by name, but it's confidential, so I'm not sure exactly which one it is on here, honestly. But it's one of the priority properties
Great.
that we just got a federal and state grant for, yeah. Yeah.
congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, I think.
So, yeah, I know that we spoke a couple months ago about the state citing legislation and how that would impact our community and our farmland and open space. And so I recommend we did a little research. I attended some seminars on the legislation, and then we put together a subcommittee that's comprised of myself as a planning commission liaison, Laura as the FOSS Farmland Open Space Preservation Liaison, and then the 2 chairs, and we've had a couple meetings. And so I just submitted a report. I'd like everybody to hold the date of June 17th. I know we have a calendar now to have a community engagement, and we're waiting till
We can
June.
amend that we can amend the community calendar.
Yeah, I talked to Sam, so it should be on the calendar.
Yeah, it's in my calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So the reason we're waiting till June is for 2 reasons. One is there is a referendum out for signatures, our home, our choice, which is to do a referendum vote in November on the state signing legislation, and so we're trying to wait. That's the deadline for those signatures is the end of May. And then the other thing is there is a lot of rulemaking going on right now at the state level with the MPSC. So there's still clarity needed for the conditions. So we've been meeting these meetings with the planner, our planner. And so I just kind of wanted to report out like where we are and see if anybody had any questions. And then the goal, it was pretty much unanimously agreed by the committee that we needed to be able to have as much input as possible on a project that's coming to our township. So that's our frame for having something in place before November. This is with the assumption that the state legislation will be in effect in November.
Did Megan tell me that having a local ordinance in place also helps with revenue capture? So it's not just about local control, it's also about maximizing revenue at the
There's
local
slight
level?
community benefits, but it's not, the real benefit is there's a utility personal property tax that's kind of unique to utility investments versus like a typical commercial or manufacturing facility doesn't have a personal property tax. So there's some benefit to having a project that's utility based because we can collect taxes. Then there's part of the legislation is there's some community benefits, but I think it's pretty nominal.
Okay.
So the biggest thing is really trying to control as much of the condition setting assuming that, that's something, it's very, still really confusing, because there's this compatible renewable energy ordinance that we have to have as a minimum, but then there's stuff out there, well, maybe we could do a workable, and they're still kind of parsing through all this
Yeah.
stuff and doing hearings and stuff. So we feel like by June, we should have a better sense of where things are and take feedback. And I know Laura's, I don't know if you have any comments to what our process has been so
No,
far.
I think you've said it really well. There needs to be more clarity from the state, right, before we go
Yeah.
making an ordinance.
We did,
Yeah.
it is very clear that any farmland or open space that is put in a PDR will not be able to have a renewable energy project on it. There's a deed restriction for any other development. So for anybody that's concerned that we have a program to preserve farmland and open space, it's not, you can't put a project on those properties,
Preserve
those
develop-
people that
So
are
no
applying.
eminent domain.
No, there's no eminent domain.
And what about properties that are in process, that have applied for, but that we're still seeking funding on?
There's-
So are the protections only for,
But only
for where
part of
the-
deed restriction,
Okay.
after the acquisition
Okay.
of those rates, development rates.
Yeah.
One more reason to keep going really aggressively on
yeah.
that, and I mean, we have a good amount set
Yes,
aside
you
for
do.
that. And I think, this year, I think we're gonna get a lot done with FOSP is really effective.
Yeah.
So September 17th is also the target date for the engineering standards at the Board of Trustees meeting, so we have those two agenda items
Okay.
for the September.
That's our
Those-
goal.
those are
you
two
know,
action items
Hopefully
for the
that,
September.
things will, we really try to work through all the meeting deadlines and public posting to make sure that we met the, deadline to have it by mid-October.
Yeah.
Because basically the state law is if you don't have an ordinance in place, the developer can say, well, they have to come to the township, but if we don't have an ordinance, they don't have anything to work with, so they can't build something, so then they can go to the state and say, you're not doing an ordinance. So we really need something.
Well, I was looking at the dates, and the third Tuesday in November is the 19th, and the swear-in date for the new board is the 20th. So this board will have a meeting in November, so that gives you one more month to work with this board.
Great. But I did put, we discussed the format a little bit of the community engagement. It's not an education format, it's, this is the law, Megan's gonna present. So I didn't really get into that. I was really more talking, just wanted to present how we're gonna communicate that we're having that date and make sure that everybody here puts it on the calendar so that it'll be here, and, we'll make sure we do a really good job, promoting it so people are aware.
And I did, not to interrupt, I apologize, it's going to be June 17th here at the Township Hall from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Oh, it's not 7?
Well, it's 7, but we reserved the room for 6 so that we could set up.
Oh.
And I think that we can push that out.
Yeah, so it should be 7 PM is what we talked about in the subcommittee for the meeting time, but if there's somebody that wants to meet before that here, we don't want to, say, you gotta get out of here. So that's why I blocked it for 6, so the actual time will be 7. Great, thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
And we'll keep you posted next month also, because we're gonna be meeting, we meet monthly.
Excellent. Well, with that, unless there are any other questions about the board reports, I'll do the second call for public comment, and then we'll go one by one and see if anybody has any final words. So second call for public comment?
Steve Birch, 9914 Horseshoe Bend. I am, as you know, recently appointed to the Planning Commission. I was asking the Township Board to consider reinstating a practice that was conducted by our previous office administrator, Ms. Kim Jordan. For my years on the ZBA and the Planning Commission, every time a person was appointed to ZBA or Planning Commission, she or he would receive a photograph and an identification badge identifying them as a appropriate organization in Dexter Township. I found this more relevant to the Zoning Board of Appeals than the Planning Commission, because the Zoning Board of Appeals typically would conduct a more thorough or intense review of a property than was necessary for a Planning Commission member. However, occasionally Planning Commission members would be reviewing a property too. The reason that I found it particularly desirable was when reviewing a property on site, as we are required to do, frequently I would encounter a person who was an owner or interested party at that site. And it was so much easier to say, here is my Dexter Township identification to demonstrate that I was there for a legal purpose, rather than somebody drifting around the property seeing what they could find to steal or whatever. I believe the township still owns the software that does this. It was a camera, which I also believe was also owned by the township, and the laminating machine was probably still somewhere, maybe in the basement. It would be some increase in demand on Ms. Edwards' time, but I found that, or I feel that it would be a very beneficial enhancement to our members of the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll look into that. And it might be useful for our zoning officer too. Yeah. Any other, I guess there's no other members of the public except Janice. Janice, would you like to say anything? Okay, then with that, are there any other issues, comments, or concerns from board members? Laura?
No?
Lon?
Good?
I'll just mention, and these seem to always happen on the days of meetings, I had a conversation today with the folks from AT&T and have a meeting later this month with Verizon to talk about the cell tower issue. AT&T says at this time in their 2-year outlook, we are not on their building plan currently. The Verizon meeting is actually with their planning, purchasing, and siting folks, so a much larger group. And that meeting will be taking place near the end of this month. So hopefully for next month's meeting, I'll have an actual report out. It is looking more and more like the existing infrastructure does not have options. The original hope from both Verizon and AT&T when I first reached out was that there would be some existing infrastructure that they could add a micro tower or micro cell to that could fix the issue. It's sounding more and more like the only solution to really provide the coverage that would be necessary will be potentially a new tower, which is about a 2-year process that we would have to undertake. But I should know more after this meeting at the end of the month with the Verizon folks as well.
Thanks for the update.
Anything else?
Okay, thank you.
Michelle, anything?
No, other than I'll be going to a voting drive at Dexter Community Schools for the National Honor Society, taking over voting applications, and it will actually go in their newsletter that we're seeking election workers, especially for young people. So that'll be this Thursday.
Great. Good. Gretchen, nothing? And I don't really have anything either because I had my supervisor report. So with that, we've done all our business and we can adjourn. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you guys especially for that presentation. I thought it was great.
Oh,
Yeah,
Thanks.
it's awesome.